The Saturday morning air was cool, the kind of crisp that hinted at autumn. Claire sat at the kitchen table with her second cup of coffee, staring at the steam as if it held answers. She hadn't been able to stop thinking about Mark's invitation. Coffee. Just coffee. But the thought of saying yes made her pulse race in ways she couldn't explain. David came downstairs, already in a pressed shirt, scrolling through his phone. He didn't notice the way her eyes followed him, didn't notice the question burning in her chest. "Where are you off to so early?" she asked. "Meeting with a client. Might be gone most of the day." Claire set her mug down with more force than she intended. "Do you ever ask me any more? About anything? About moving, about your schedule, about us?" David sighed, rubbing his forehead. "Claire, not this again." "Yes, this again." Her voice rose. "You come and go like I'm a roommate. You don't even look at me. Do you realize the only time we talk is when I ask about work?" He set his phone down finally, eyes narrowing. "What do you want from me? I work hard so we have a life, so the bills are paid, so—" "I don't need a provider," she cut in, her voice shaking. "I need a partner. I need someone who sees me." The words hung heavy in the kitchen. For a moment, David's expression flickered. Guilt? Weariness? But it hardened quickly. "You're exaggerating," he muttered. "You've always been dramatic." Claire's breath caught. That word again. Dramatic. As if her pain was a performance. Her hands curled into fists. "You know what, David? Maybe I am dramatic. Maybe I'm just done living like a ghost in my own house." That afternoon, she drove to the cafe where Mark had suggested they meet. She told herself it was harmless, that she only needed someone to talk to. But her hands trembled as she parked, as if her body knew the line she was about to cross. Mark was already there, sitting by the window with 2 cups waiting. When he saw her, his smile reached his eyes, warm and unguarded. "I wasn't sure you'd come," he said. Claire sat down, exhaling slowly. "Neither was I." They talked for hours. About art, about music, about the ache of loneliness. Claire found herself laughing, really laughing, until her cheeks hurt. She couldn't remember the last time she'd felt so light. At one point, Mark grew quiet, studying her. "You know, you deserve more than silence." Her throat tightened. "I don't know what I deserve anymore." He reached across the table, just brushing his fingers against hers. The touch was fleeting, but it sent a shock through her. Claire pulled her hand back quickly, heart pounding. "I should go." Mark nodded, though his eyes lingered. "I understand. But Claire, don't forget that you matter." That night, back in her bedroom, David was already asleep. Claire slipped under the covers, staring at the ceiling. The guilt was sharp, but so was the memory of Mark's hand, his words. For the first time in years, she felt both terrified and alive. And she knew something had shifted. The confrontation with David had cracked open the truth. And Mark had shown her what it felt like to be seen. The storm inside her was no longer quiet, it was roaring. The morning after the cafe, Claire woke with a knot in her stomach. She lay in bed, listening to the soft hum of the ceiling fan and the distant sounds of David moving around downstairs. Every time she thought about Mark's hand brushing hers, heat flushed her cheeks, quickly followed by a wave of shame. She hadn't kissed him. She hadn't crossed that line. But wasn't she already standing dangerously close to it? When she finally walked into the kitchen, David was at the table, laptop open, eyes glued to the screen. He didn't look up when she poured herself coffee. "I'm traveling next week," he said casually, as if reading her thoughts. "Corporate meetings. 3 nights, maybe 4. Claire stiffened. "Where?" "Chicago." There it was again, the city that had become a wedge between them. "Have you already decided?" she asked quietly. David didn't answer, just tapped at his keyboard. The silence that followed told her everything. Later that day, Claire wandered into her art class with a heavy heart. She avoided Mark's eyes at first, but when he asked softly, "Are you okay?" something inside her crumbled. "I don't know," she admitted. They painted side by side in silence, the colors on her page blurring as her thoughts tangled. She wanted to tell him she couldn't keep meeting like this, that it was wrong. But when he laughed at one of her clumsy brushstrokes, warmth spread through her chest like sunlight breaking through clouds. How could something that felt so good be so dangerous? That night, Claire stayed up late cleaning the kitchen, avoiding the bedroom until exhaustion forced her upstairs. David was already asleep, his phone glowing faintly on the nightstand. She reached to plug in her charger when a message flashed across his screen. Just a glimpse, but enough. Can't wait to see you again. Last night was amazing. Claire froze. Her pulse thundered in her ears. Her first instinct was denial. Maybe it was a colleague, a joke, something innocent. But deep down she knew. She'd felt the distance for years, the late nights at the office, the sudden trips. Her knees weakened. She sank onto the edge of the bed, staring at the man who slept soundly beside her. The guilt she'd carried about Mark twisted into something new, rage. She whispered into the darkness, her voice shaking, "So it isn't just me." The next morning, David was gone before she woke. He left no note this time. Claire sat at the kitchen table with cold coffee, Mark's kindness echoing in her memory, David's betrayal burning like acid in her chest. For the first time, she realized their marriage wasn't just broken by silence. It was shattered by secrets. And hers was no longer the only one. Thanksgiving had always been Claire's favorite holiday. The house filled with the smell of roasting turkey, pies cooling on the counter, football murmuring from the living room. It was noisy, warm, alive. This year, the house looked the same, but the air felt different. Emma was home from college, her laughter bouncing off the walls as she unpacked stories from campus life. Josh had flown in from Boston, dropping his suitcase in the hallway before scooping Max into his arms. For a brief moment, the house buzzed like it used to, and Claire's heart ached with bittersweet joy. But every time her eyes met David's across the room, the weight of their secrets pulled her back down. At dinner, the table was crowded again, plates piled high, glasses clinking. Emma chatted about her classes, Josh teased her about dorm food, and Claire smiled, pretending everything was normal. "So Dad," Josh said, carving into his turkey, "are you really moving to Chicago?" Claire's fork froze midair. She turned slowly toward David. David cleared his throat. "It's a possibility. Nothing's decided yet." Emma frowned. "When were you going to tell us?" Josh smirked. Classic dad move. Work first, family second. "Josh," Claire warned softly, but the sting of truth hung in the air. David's jaw tightened. "It's not like that." "Then what is it like?" Claire asked quietly, her voice sharper than she intended. The table fell silent. Emma glanced between them, her smile fading. "Mom? Dad? What's going on?" The weight of years pressed against Claire's chest. She wanted to keep the facade intact, to protect the children from the storm brewing between their parents. But the silence was suffocating. "We're figuring things out," she said finally, her eyes dropping to her plate. Josh set down his fork. "Figuring what out? You two look like you can barely stand to be in the same room." "Josh," David snapped. "No," Emma said softly, her eyes glassy. "He's right. Something's wrong. We can feel it." Claire swallowed hard, tears threatening. Marriage isn't simple. Sometimes, people drift apart. Emma shook her head, her voice trembling. "You can't. Not you two. You're supposed to be," she stopped, biting her lip as her eyes filled. Josh pushed his chair back roughly. "I knew it. I've seen this coming for years." He stood, muttering something about going for a walk, and the front door slammed behind him. The silence that followed was worse than any argument. That night, Claire found Emma curled on the couch, hugging a pillow. "Mom," she whispered, "is it really over?" Claire sat beside her, stroking her daughter's hair like she used to when she was little. "I don't know," she admitted, her voice cracking. "But whatever happens, you and Josh will always be loved. That will never change." Emma leaned into her, silent tears soaking her sleeve. In the hallway, David stood in the shadows, listening. His face was unreadable. When the kids left after the holiday, the house plunged into silence again. But this time, it wasn't the tender ache of an empty nest. It was the silence of a family torn apart, with wounds too raw to ignore. And Claire knew the storm was about to break wide open. The house was painfully quiet after Thanksgiving. Emma's laughter was gone, Josh's sarcasm gone, even Max seemed subdued as he lay by the door where the kids had last hugged him goodbye. Claire moved through the rooms like a ghost, replaying the tension at the dinner table. Emma's tears. Josh's anger. The hollow look in David's eyes as he avoided every hard question. The weight of it pressed against her chest until she felt she might break. By Thursday night, she did. David came home late, shoulders hunched, tie loosened, smelling faintly of whiskey. Claire was waiting in the living room, the lamp casting soft light across her face. "We need to talk," she said firmly. He sighed, dropping his briefcase. "Claire, I'm tired." "No." Her voice cut sharp. "No more excuses. No more silence. We talk tonight." For a moment, he looked at her as though seeing her for the first time in months. He sank onto the couch opposite her, rubbing his temples. "What do you want me to say?" he asked. "I want the truth." Her hands trembled, but her voice didn't falter. "Are you seeing someone?" His head jerked up, eyes narrowing. "Where did you?" "I saw the message, David. On your phone. Can't wait to see you again." "Who is she?" The color drained from his face. Silence stretched, thick and damning. Finally he muttered, "It's not what you think." Claire let out a bitter laugh. "It's exactly what I think." "How long?" He looked away. "A few months." Her chest cracked open. She stood pacing, tears spilling hot down her cheeks. "A few months?" "While I've been here, trying to hold this family together, trying to reach you, you've been..." Her voice broke. "God, David." He stood too, anger flashing now. "Don't act like you're innocent. You've been drifting off into your own little world. Those art classes, those late nights out, don't think I don't notice." Claire froze. "Do you even hear yourself? You're blaming me for your affair." His fists clenched at his sides. "I'm saying we've both given up in our own ways." Her laugh was hollow. "No, David. I was lonely. You were unfaithful. Don't twist it." The room vibrated with everything unsaid. Years of swallowed resentment spilled into the open. "You stopped caring about us a long time ago," she said, her voice trembling. "When the kids left, all that was left was silence. And you didn't even try to fill it. You just walked away." He shot back, "And you? You wanted me to sit around and talk about feelings every night? That's not who I am, Claire. It never was." Her shoulders sagged. "Then maybe that's the problem. Maybe we don't even know each other anymore." They stood there, two strangers bound by decades of history, staring across a chasm too wide to cross. Finally, David spoke, his voice low. "Maybe we need some space." Claire swallowed hard. The words stung, but part of her felt relief. "Maybe we do." That night, Claire packed a small bag and slept in the guest room. The storm she had felt building for months had finally broken. Lying awake, staring at the unfamiliar ceiling, she realized something terrifying and liberating all at once. Her marriage might be over. And for the first time, she wondered if she was ready to let it go. The days after the fight blurred together. David slept in their bedroom, Claire in the guest room. They moved around the house like shadows, silent, careful not to cross paths for longer than necessary. The silence was no longer empty. It was heavy, bruised, filled with words left unsaid. On Wednesday, Claire met Mark again at the cafe. She hadn't meant to, her feet simply carried her there. When she saw him by the window, reading with a cup of coffee, the ache in her chest eased. "You look tired," he said gently when she sat down. She laughed, bitter and soft. "I am tired. Tired of fighting. Tired of pretending." Mark closed his book, his eyes steady on hers. "Claire, you don't have to carry this alone." For a dangerous moment, she let herself imagine it, the warmth of his hand in hers, a life filled with laughter and color. A life where she was seen. But then she pictured Emma's tearful eyes at Thanksgiving, Josh's anger, the house they'd built. The years of history that tied her to David, for better or worse. Her throat tightened. "Mark, you've been a gift in a very dark time. But I can't," she stopped, the words catching. "I can't just walk into something new while my old life is in pieces. I need to decide who I am first." He nodded slowly, sadness flickering in his gaze but also respect. "Then decide. And whatever you choose, I hope it brings you peace." That night, Claire sat in the living room, waiting. When David came home, surprised to find her there, she motioned for him to sit. "We can't keep doing this," she said quietly. He sank onto the couch, exhaustion etched in every line of his face. "I know." They sat in silence for a long moment before she spoke again. "We have two choices. We end this, or we fight for it. But if we fight, it has to be different. No more silence. No more secrets." David stared at his hands. When he finally looked up, his eyes were raw. "I don't know if I can be the man you need." Claire's heart twisted. "Then be honest. Don't stay because it's easy. Don't stay because it's habit." He swallowed hard. "Do you want to end it?" Her chest ached with the weight of the question. She thought of the years of shared memories, their children, the vacations, the nights they had once fallen asleep in each other's arms. She thought of the betrayal, the loneliness, the way silence had carved them into strangers. Finally, she whispered, "I don't know. But I know I can't keep living like this." The days that followed weren't filled with sudden answers. There were long talks, bitter tears, fragile attempts at honesty. Some nights, David stayed at a hotel. Some nights, he stayed and they sat across from each other, trying to remember what love had once felt like. It wasn't neat. It wasn't simple. But for the first time in years, they weren't pretending. On a quiet Sunday morning, Claire stood at the window with her coffee, sunlight spilling across the floor. She thought of the storm that had torn through her life, of silence, of temptation, of secrets. And she realized storms didn't just destroy. They cleared the air. They forced things into the open. Her marriage might survive. It might not. But either way, she was no longer invisible. She had found her voice. And whatever choice she made tomorrow, it would be hers.